Thanks everyone for downloading this episode of the Nerdball Podcast. I am your host, Lorenzo Melcher. As always, in my parents' basement, recording in this wonderful space that they've allowed me to be in. So, as always, thanks to all of you for downloading, liking, sharing, subscribing to the podcast. Going to YouTube, hitting that bell would be great for this podcast. Anything you do is great. I appreciate all of you out there for always interacting. If you want to reach us, search any social media, just search the Nerdball Podcast. The email is thenerdballpodcast@gmail.com. If you want to be a guest, feel free to shoot us a line. We'll see what we can do, line it up. I have some great guests coming up, not only today, but also the rest of the month and into the new year. So I look forward to you hearing all about that. As always, I appreciate all of you. So I hope you enjoyed this episode. This was a great conversation I had with my boss. So I hope you enjoyed it as well. Thanks.
I'm Craig Elton, and this is the Nerdball Podcast.
This is the Nerdball Podcast with Lorenzo Melcher.
Perfect.
Nailed it. I am on point this morning.
All right. Well, Craig, thanks for coming on the podcast.
Well, I'm happy to be here.
Sorry, I didn't cut you off right away.
Oh.
It's what's going to happen the whole time. I'm just going to cut you.
That's fine.
I think you're the person who's driven the furthest to come on the podcast.
Oh, really?
So, yeah, I think so.
All the way from the big town of Delta.
Yeah. You've been crying and whining the whole time, just trying to come on the podcast. And
I felt a little slighted here. Everybody else has been on but me. You don't let your boss come on. That's kind of messed up.
That's right. You're here now.
Yeah.
So the first question I always ask people is, what is something you nerd out about? Something you're really into. It can't be about your job though. Something to kind of get you away from that.
I guess recently it's been coaching my daughter softball. So coached rec for several years. Last year I thought I was done. My youngest is going to be moving up. She's really not interested as much as my other child. And I was like, wow, this might be the opportunity for me to step away. An opportunity came along where I could travel and coach my middle daughter again. So it was kind of up and down. I was going to do it, wasn't going to do it, I was going to do it, wasn't going to do it. And it ended up that actually found another coach that wanted to be the head coach, and I could just be the assistant, which is the perfect role for me. I lead in my professional life every day, and I don't need to be the leader. I just want to be a part of it. So that was a really great fit for me, and it's been a really good experience this year to do that.
Andrea always talks about that too, where she makes decisions all day, and the last thing she wants to do when she comes home is make more decisions. So it's not like I'm forced to do all these things, but she just gets tired. In the same vein of hey, I'm a leader at work. If I can do these other things where I don't necessarily have to be, I'm in charge of the team, but not necessarily the entire families and all that stuff. It makes it a little easier.
So you and I are similar in that way. You're a supervisor at work. You lead. Your wife leads. My wife is a leader at work as well. She's a programs manager where she is. So I think we both get burnt on that end, and we kind of point at each other to make decisions. Yeah. And most of the time, I don't really care. But I guess dinner is the biggest one. Every night is who. I end up making 90% of the meals, and maybe 90s. Let's go 89% of the meals. But just deciding what we're gonna have is always the biggest pain in the butt for us.
Yeah, and I've learned that if I try to get ahead of it. Even it seems like a real simple thing, but I'm sure you've had those taco kits you get from the store, right? Mm-hmm. So you had to buy ground beef. So I was like, all right, well, I'm going to get ahead of this. I'm going to make it, and it'll just be in the fridge because we're always busy. So when we come home, we just got to warm it up and warm the tortillas up, and we're good to go. We never ate it.
So that's where Nicole's really good. Is she's more of a planner. I know that'll shock you than what I am. I'm very much a big picture person. And,
yeah.
So I'm just like, we buy a bunch of food. I'll figure it out when I get there. As I always say, that's a future Craig problem.
Yeah.
And so she does a really good job of making a menu and putting it on the board. And I follow it most of the time. Sometimes I'm like, I'm not doing that. So
Which I'm sure she's fine with because at least something's getting made. Right?
yeah. And the bigger issue is usually we buy food to make those meals. So when I go off script, it screws up multiple meals or something. So yeah. But hey, as long as I'm making them, I guess it's my call.
Yeah. Well, to go back to coaching real quick, you've been doing that a while, and we talk about it a lot because I was doing it, and I think I 100%. I think I'm done because Lillian just decided she didn't want to play anymore. So we'll see. I'm still like the last thing I did for the team was help them plan winter practices, and I scheduled all that. I still have the money in my account, and I'm trying to guys, this is my last little thing that's attaching me to this team, and and I don't know what's gonna happen, but I think I'm finally done, which is sad a little bit because I don't get to be around softball and watch Lillian play softball, but it's also nice because I mean, you know how busy I am, so it gives me a little bit of time to do other stuff. But you've been coaching a while. Have you coached all your daughters? I don't know if they've all play or not.
I don't. I didn't coach Peyton. Peyton's my oldest. She was not really into it, and when I say I didn't, I did from the sidelines because Peyton has autism and stuff. So when she'd get up to the plate, you'd actually have to talk her into going up and sitting in the box and swinging the bat. So it was extremely difficult. It was probably the best thing ever that I didn't because of just that relationship I had to play in that fact. It was pretty cool. Her last at bat she ever took, she got a hit, so kind of capped that off. But from time to time, she's like, "I was a good hitter, I got that hit." I'm like, "No, you weren't." We can go out and I can throw softballs to you right now, and you're gonna find out very quickly that's not what you want to do.
Hey, but she left with a good memory, right?
She did. She did. So she moved on to cheerleading and stuff, which my wife has actually coached her for a couple years, and then she moved up to junior high, and she was a cheerleader for 7th and 8th grade, and I think she's done. We'll see come freshman year if she tries out again, but she's kind of looking for that new thing to do. So she went to the next golf meeting, and she's going to try that.
All right.
That'll be interesting.
Well, it's always good to, and I think I talked about this in the last podcast too, helping or just watching your kids figure out what they want or what they like or what they're capable of doing, and it's fun because sometimes you get to experience all this stuff that you don't cheerleading, you never had any finger in that at all, and now now we're going to games and watching cheerleading and learning about that, so it's fun in that aspect.
It is fun, and while I don't proclaim to be the best parent of watching cheerleading, I do go and watch, and then I end up getting to watch a bunch of younger kids play football, so that's kind of cool. And even watch not only her progress, but all those kids progress up through their junior high years, and it's kind of seeing where they're at now and what they'll end up being in high school is really cool. So I've got to see that for the last couple of years, and you're starting to see that in our high school program now, where a lot of the freshmen are starting, and we just brought back my old football coach, Mike Vickers. So that was pretty cool to see as well, and just to see all those kids progress. And my middle child, she has played every sport, so she's big into softball now. But at one time or another, she tried volleyball, figured out that wasn't for her. Tried basketball, was really good, but she is so passive that she just doesn't like the physical nature of those sports. So she kind of let that one go, and even now she's 5'4" at 12 years old, so she's tall, especially for her age, and she would be really good. Just doesn't like that nature. Yeah. Then she went to cheerleading, and she's really shy too, so that didn't work out.
Oh man!
So softball's her deal, which is ironic because she's a pitcher, and that's the focal point of the whole game. And then my youngest,
I would say if you don't talk about all of them, you're gonna be in trouble.
Oh, I'll definitely talk about all of them. They all have their challenges. My youngest is really into tumbling. She's really good at extremely flexible to the point where you're gonna hurt yourself. You need to stop that. And so she's tried cheerleading, and I don't know where she's gonna end up with that. If any of them is a cheerleader, it's her. She's the most outgoing, friends with everyone. As you know, we put our daughters in the same room for 5 minutes, and they're best friends.
Yeah.
So we'll see. I think she's gonna try to play softball again this year, and I might have to go back and coach again because she's got a weird birthday of January 1st, so she could play either way. We moved her up a year early, which probably was bad and very selfish on our end of not wanting to split time. now she has the chance to play 10U for like the third time. So we'll see. I'm not going to push her either way. She has with Paige and I to some practices and like did some hitting and stuff. So we'll see what happens there.
I think that's the hardest part too. Is you as parents, we see what our kids are good at or what they like, and then trying to like push them towards it, but make it their idea. Because like I know for football, Mateo really likes football, and he says he wants to work out. So then I kind of push him towards that, and it's almost like, all right, how much can I push until there's like, no, I don't want to do that anymore. But sometimes it's too like you push too much and it's too late, and then they're done with it. You know.
Yeah, that's certainly the battle of coaching your own kid. That's why I like the fact that I'm not the head coach right now. I may be able to say, "Hey, Mike, why don't you catch Paige this morning?" and they can work together. And we have a really good pitching coach as well, Lauren. She does a great job. Where she actually is like, "You're not allowed to catch her anymore. Like you need to bring a catcher because." She focuses more. She's not worried about you as much and all my dad comments. So,
can you catch her without saying anything and just be the catcher?
Yeah. So we've had trouble getting catchers lately just because our schedule's moved this way and that way. Lauren is extremely busy and especially around the holidays. So we'll schedule a month in advance and things will come up. I mean, it's just how it is. And so like if we move from a 7:00 to a 4:30, I don't have a lot of opportunity to find someone. So I did have found that I can just sit there and shut up. I bite my tongue and just sit there. But it is funny because even Presley, as much as she is a girly girl cheerleader, she really wanted to go to and wrestle this year. And I'm fine with it. My wife has mixed feelings about it. It's very new to at least our high school. I know it's not new everywhere, but it's gaining a lot more momentum throughout all the schools in our region. And so I would have been okay with it. I know my daughter pretty well. She doesn't like to work hard. And if you're going to go to Delta, similar to Perrysburg,
yes,
you better be willing to work hard if you want to do this. And, we may try it next year. We'll see. But she also took up archery. So it's the same nights. So you had to pick one or the other. And we already did this. So she's going to do archery this year. And We'll see where that leads, but I could totally see her going back to doing that, the wrestling thing. She's a much more physical kid for sure.
What do you think? What even like had that in her brain? Like I want to try this. Did she had a friend or anybody that did it? Or?
I don't know if she has any friends that do it or not. She certainly sees going to Delta the wrestling thing, and she has a cousin that wrestles. She has a couple cousins that wrestle. So her oldest cousin, Mason, he's a senior this year, just wrestles, and he sees some of that. And then one of my other nephews, who's in similar age, wrestle, and they end up wrestling all the time whenever they're around. And he whomps on her, but she just keeps on coming for more. Yeah. So I don't know where it really came from, but she's kind of into it. So we'll see what happens next year.
Yeah,
maybe even no, it'll be next year. I don't have time for anything else.
Yeah, and that's the other part too. Like you want to foster all these things, but then how do you fit everything in? And and you also are battling against. All right, we're for me anyway. I don't want to do something year round if we can help it. Like there's other sports and other seasons for reasons. So let's try those other things. It's hard. It's hard to like schedule it.
And that's what makes me nervous about Paige, who's come out and said, "Well, I want to play college ball," and we have the discussion of, well, this is what college ball players do.
Yeah.
This is the dedication it takes. You can't just want to go pitch once every 3 weeks. You got to be doing it all the time, or you got to be working on this or working on that. And softball now is year round, and I'm just afraid she's going to get burnt out. So it is definitely a conscious thought of what else. And we try to push her into other spaces, and she just doesn't want to do it. Academically, she's doing other things, so now she's part of the National Honor Society and stuff like that. So she's getting out doing things like that. But like I said, each of our kids are so different and so the same in many different ways. So Peyton, I had mentioned that autism is certainly thrives in environments where there's not a lot of people in small group settings, and even though Paige isn't, she thrives in the same thing. She's very quiet and to herself. And then you have Presley, who's completely opposite, just balls to the wall, off every wall, and everywhere in between. So.
It was funny when you brought her and they met each other, because you weren't joking when it was like they're best friends, because they immediately went off and were hanging out and, you know, setting up plans and stuff already. And come over. And I always joke too, where at some point, like they live such different lives, but they have no idea, like, because it's not like, you know, Presley's going to talk about, oh, the one time I went hunting or did this or that, or, you know, I shot a squirrel or that kind of stuff. And like, what are you talking about?
Yeah. Yeah, I was ripping out the gizzards of these doves, Dad. And blah, 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 blah. Yeah, it is totally different. And that's another thing that's different about the girls. Peyton has zero interest in being outside and doing those things. Paige has interest of, you know, like riding a bike or playing softball. But other than that, Presley wants to be outside all the time. She's my one that wants to go hunting. We go out and sit in blinds and go squirrel hunting and dove hunting and all these other things. And they're just all three very unique individuals. It's kind of interesting. And you talk to the people at school and they're like, yeah, you couldn't even tell they're sisters at times. So.
And hunting, is that something you've done since you were little?
Yeah, my dad brought us all up hunting, and the same thing. My sister, each one of us took a hunter safety course. He thought it was very important for us to know the rules and regulations of hunting, but more importantly, gun safety. We've always been around guns, so every one of us kids did that, and so my sister and my older brother both never really took into the hunting thing, and myself and my younger brother did. So we've been hunting, you know, most of our lives. I think we started probably around 7 years old, going out squirrel hunting with him, and even before that, we'd walk with him or something through the woods and go. But you know, ever since like 10 years old, you know, it was about when I shot my first deer, and you know, we pretty much stuck with it ever since. So having three girls, that was like the one thing I was like, we're just really want a boy, you know. I'd like to be able to. I played football. I really like to kind of pass on some of that stuff, and just different mindset of what that looks like. And you know, the hunting thing, I try to give every girl the opportunity. So Paige did it as well. She went out a couple times. She was like, I don't like it. I have to get up really early and it's really cold. So I don't want to do that anymore. And she didn't see anything. So that's what I'm trying to not let happen this time with Presley, is like, we've been out a few times. She hasn't seen anything, and she's starting to get discouraged. And so now I'm trying to pick the right opportunities to make sure that she at least sees something to get her excited. We went up north. My parents have a cabin up north, 40 acres around Houghton Lake area, and took her up there deer hunting. And the best part about it for her is she got to miss school, so she was super excited. But we went out a couple times, didn't see anything, saw a bunch of squirrels, and I was like, well, I don't want her to get discouraged. Let's go squirrel hunting instead. So I took her out squirrel hunting, and you know, we saw some squirrels, which was good. She didn't get to have the opportunity to take a shot or anything, but then we saw a deer. We couldn't do anything about it, but it was really cool because it came in, it got within like 20 yards of us, and it started pawing at the ground, and she's like, I think it's going to charge us. I'm like, no, it's not going to charge us. So,
well, it's cool, like for her to be like, all right, yeah, there are things out here.
Yeah, you know? Yeah. So, she heard a barred owl scream, which was kind of scary in itself. Like if you didn't know what it was.
Yeah.
So she's like, what is that? It's just now. It'll be okay. So she's learned a lot. She's seen a lot of things that my other daughters haven't, like a pileated woodpecker, you know, at like 10 yards and pecking on a tree and seeing just the size of them and how cool they look. And you know, the last time we were out, we saw a coyote. So that's something else none of my other girls have gotten to see, you know, in real life and in person. And so
when she comes back and tells them all these things, are they just like, cool? And
yeah, they care less. They care less.
It's like she wants them to be jealous, and they're just like, all right, good job for you.
Yep. I mean, even the work we do, you know, my two oldest, they like going to the park, but they like going ice skating or roller skating. They like to play on the playgrounds. They could care less about the nature aspect of it. They don't say, hey, let's go walk on a trail. Let's go to the playground. And now that two of them are getting old enough where they don't want to do that, it's can we go to the ice ribbon? Can we go skating? You know, so.
Yeah. Well, that's the coolest thing, because I was never into birds, like, at all. And the coolest thing is like having you and Nate, especially, like I'll be with Nate and I was like, I wouldn't have never thought to ask like what a bird was, but I'll just like, hey, what's that bird? And he could tell me, and then I get to see it over and over, or all the cool things that like I said, I never would have thought about birds at all.
Yeah.
And now every time I see it, like, oh, there's that American kestrel that's just been hanging out, at the park for a while.
Really cool birds. And,
Yeah.
Growing up in that atmosphere, I don't know if I ever really took it for granted. Like, hey, I've gotten to see all these cool things and experience all these things. I just took it as like, everybody does that. So like even going through high school and college, I was part of an FFA, and we did nature and wildlife contests. So I'd go to those. I think we had like 4 or 5 a year, and I ended up being one of the top, 2 or 3 in the state. So we'd go to these contests, we'd go to state, and I'd end up being top 1 or 2, 3 in the state. And so I went to college. Like I had to take all the same classes. I went to Hocking for ranger services, and we had to take all the similar classes, whether it was dendrology or ornithology, all these different classes, and I didn't have to study at all. I knew all of it. Like I knew what that plane was. I knew what this was.
Yeah.
The only thing I had to learn was Latin names. That was the big one. Like I could tell you some Latin names of trees, but all the animals and mammals, no, not a chance.
That was the hardest part too when I went to Owens in our Woody ID class. It's like, all right, here's this tree, and you got to know the common name and the scientific name. Like,
Right.
oh, cool. I understand why you need it.
Yeah.
And I have ordered trees that way before, where people don't like, well, what are you talking about? And then if I say have the scientific name, then obviously they know what I'm talking about.
Especially when you get to cultivars, it starts really making a big difference.
Yeah.
Oh, red oak. Okay, red oak's red oak until well, that's a bad example, but like some of the maples that
Yes.
summer blaze or fall blaze or autumn blaze. Autumn blazes now. There's so many cultivars it makes a difference.
Yeah. So you mentioned Hocking College. Is that when you were coming out of high school? Is that the only school you wanted to go to, or were there other things you thought of?
Yeah. No, I think I had my mind made up for a while. That's where I wanted to go.
Yeah. Specifically for Ranger Services too.
Yeah. My cousin, as you know, who we work with, is a ranger at Metroparks, and I saw what he was doing. I kind of wanted to do that or become a game warden. As I went through the process and learned what a game warden does, while I think it was very cool and very necessary, it's like I don't want to work when I want to be out there hunting.
Oh, yeah.
So, that went to the wayside, and I was like, well, I can still be a ranger, still do similar things, still have similar responsibilities, and still make a difference. And once I got in Metroparks, I learned what they did, but I really learned that I wanted to have an impact in a different way, and saw how I could do that on the operations side of things. And my whole thing from once I started was like, how do I create those amazing experiences to let everyone enjoy? That's kind of why I do what I do now. That is what drives me. So I found out very quickly after I graduated that wasn't what I wanted to do anymore. I didn't want to. And this is not a knock on any law enforcement or rangers. Like, I don't want to spend most of my time in a car.
Oh, yeah.
I don't want to have some of my confrontations be negative. We deal with enough of that just on the being the boss side of things. But, that's not what I wanted to do. I want to create great experiences and have a lot of that be positive. And, when I look back at what I do, I go to work where everyone else goes to play. I mean, how bad can it be? So,
yeah.
But, yeah.
Well, it's and as you were saying, talking about being in operations and wanting to make everyone have a good time and positive experiences, like, and probably some of the staff don't realize, like, hey, if you go and you clean that shelter and you clean the grill and people come to it, that's already something good, because you could go to any other parks and it might not be that way. The grill could be filled with coals and so
old food and grossness.
Yeah. So all of those little things where people are good or bad for us, they expect these things, and we have to deliver on these things that these customers expect of us. They expect a clean shelter, they expect a clean restroom, but all that is adding to the experience.
And funny and oddly enough, I always say if I had to do it all over again, I probably wouldn't go to Hocking. I'd probably went to UT and did some like a business administration stuff, and that's just for the simple fact of where I ended up in my life. It's been extremely helpful to have been through the OPATA courses and was a certified officer at one time.
And OPATA's for law enforcement.
Yep,
right?
Ohio Peace Officers Training association. I don't know what the A is, but regardless, in my daily work now, and I at least understand what's going on. I can understand what needs to happen, and we can have those conversations from department to department. So it was good. It's not like I don't use it, but I think I could have benefited from other things better.
Yeah. Well, I would imagine if you ask a lot of people, they would have changed. Maybe not the end result, but how they got there. Like I really enjoy my job and I never really thought of like, well, what could I have done? Because college, I got my 2-year degree and I was done. Like I did not want to go to school anymore, and it led me to where it's led me. But what could I have done different? I don't know. But I'm sure there's a lot of people who are like, oh, I could have done this instead, and it would have prepared me a lot for my current job. Like, well, you don't know what you're going to do or how you're going to get there. I'm sure. I don't know. Maybe you did when you started as a seasonal at the Metroparks. Did you think like, oh, I want to be regional manager? At the time, they didn't have any, right?
Right.
Yeah.
No.
So like, you don't know what that's going to end up.
No, I think early on I started, and I was dating someone at the time that really pushed me as well, and like I knew I didn't want to be just go to work every day and be told what to do. Like I've always had that leadership mentality in me, whether it was on the football field or just around my friends. Like I was always considered a jerk and an ass. No, no. I mean some of that, yes.
Yeah,
but a leader in my own rights, and
Yeah.
I ended up starting my own business where I ran that for a few years, and got to the point where it was like I either need to quit Metroparks or go full time into this. It was a lot. It helped pay the bills, but once I got to management, it made the decision a lot easier. Where I was making money I could actually live off of, and I still did that stuff on the side for years. Moving trees for people and this and that, and then eventually I just got out of it altogether. But I would say early on, I knew I wanted to become a park manager of some type. It's funny back then I think about it, and the structure was way different. I was like, yeah, my end goal is to be the park manager at Oak Openings. That was my ceiling.
Yeah.
When I hit that like 10 years in, I had 20 plus years to go. So I probably should raise that ceiling a little bit.
Yeah.
So, and even now, I kid all the time with you, like, gonna have to see some change in 5 years, or I'm out of here, or, this or that, or come in like put my 2 weeks in tomorrow. I have this opportunity. I love what I do. I love what we do there, and being a part of the huge change that we're a part of right now is just really awesome to be a part of. And I don't know what my future leaves for me, but I certainly want to see this through.
That's what makes it good too. Of if you, not just us, but anybody who likes what they do or loves their job, like the future is less scary because you're not constantly thinking like, well, I got to figure something out. I'm miserable, or it's not fun here, or the staff is bad, or the job in itself is terrible. But like if all that stuff is in a good place, then the future is less scary because there's not a lot to worry about on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, and I think you've seen this, and I've certainly seen it there. If you get recognized for being good at something, they'll figure out how to use you. So, me being a part of our HR team now is kind of weird. Why is this operation guy, share this role? But it's something I'm passionate about. I'm passionate about developing people. I'm passionate about efficiencies of the operation. So, it was a good fit, and it's worked out really well so far. But where does that lead me? I don't know. Where does it lead you? When your endeavors and with what you want to do now, we got to figure that out. So.
Yeah. There's always, and I think that's what's good. There's always like, there's no settling, right? And I try to tell that to the staff, like, hey, if you are in your sweet spot, as we like to say, that's fine, but there's still growth. You're always growing. You're always finding new things. That doesn't mean you have to go up, but you're always going out and finding more opportunities or more knowledge or whatever.
Yeah.
And it makes work not stale. Like you don't want to be coming in and just stagnant all the time. And that's a good thing about being downtown too, is it's not.
Oh, yeah.
there's always
something to do.
Yeah.
I think that's why I like being a coach, and I think that's probably why you like being a coach. Putting together teams, finding your strengths and weaknesses, and working on those things. That's why I like the role I'm in with the human resources part of things. I get to work on everybody's team now.
Yeah.
You know, we get to make tweaks and push people here, push people there, and make the changes necessary to make us as good as we can. I wouldn't say I'm where I want to be for sure, but I think we're working in the right direction for sure. And I see a lot of that in you and all the coaching you're doing, and really being that spokesman for a team and you know, guiding them in the right direction. What stinks about all of our positions is we start guiding people and then they'll end up leaving one way or another. And we're going through some of that transition now, but while the short-term transition is going to hurt, I think we have opportunities to keep growing.
Yeah. Well, and that's what we're there for.
Yep.
We're there to help them grow. And
Yeah, I wish it was obvious for everyone.
yeah, I agree with you. I do want to go back to real quick because we've talked about it before about your business that you started. But what I want to go back to that. What made you want to have your own landscape business?
It really started out as nothing.
Mowing a couple lawns and
No, I had an ex-girlfriend, sold his house. He knew I was into trees and had the knowledge and ability to do things. And he's like, hey, yeah, if you want to call him up, I'm sure he would give you a price to do all this work you want to do. So I started out with like one house in Perrysburg, and it turned into like half the neighborhood. And then it turned into moving trees all over Northwest Ohio and Southern Michigan. And
those,
doing
by the
landscapes.
way, those tree spades are unbelievable.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is for me. Like I find it very fascinating to like see them in action.
I still love them.
No, it's weird.
I've sold every piece of equipment I have except for that.
Oh, you still have your tree spade?
Yeah, I still have my tree spade.
Yeah.
So I think I have one last project. I was just talking to my buddy and my brother about this the other day. It's like, I think I have one last project I want to use with it. I'd like to buy some property next to me eventually. As my daughter gets older, I would like to build our house, but also keep that house for her, depending on how life shakes out. And I have a bunch of arborvitaes I'd want to move and kind of create some windbreaks. But I think that's my last project with it, and I'll probably sell it. But you know, I've used it in Southern Ohio and moving trees on my buddy's property, and they're awesome. I love them.
Yeah,
you know?
that's crazy. So how long did you have this business?
About 5 years.
Okay.
About 5 years.
So it sounds like it went from nothing to something really quick.
Yes. Yeah, it went from nothing to something really quick to being, and you know how the landscape company is. It's very cutthroat, so you either have to be all in or you're not in at all. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of where I was at. I hired most of my friends, which is great, but then you have to fire some of your friends, which is not great. And once they were aging out, you know, same with me, like they were going to college, they're going to get real careers, and you have less people you trust. And it got to the point where I either have to do this or not. And I really wanted to follow my passion, which was the Parks and Rec side of things. Mm-hmm. Especially once I got into it, I really fell in love with it. And, you know, as much as dealing with the public can be tough at times, dealing with unhappy customers who killed their trees because they refused to water them or this and that became really a hard pill to swallow. It was like, there was nothing we did here that was wrong. And you have to warranty it anyway, you know, and so you're just eating it all the time. I don't do well in that space. So
I am right. But now I have to pay for it.
Yep, exactly.
So you sold your business and then went full go into this Metroparks, and now have you been at every Metropark or been a supervisor of some sorts at every park?
Everyone but Swan Creek.
Okay.
And TBG. Those are the only two I haven't oversaw in some capacity at some time. So those are my two ones, and honestly, I don't know if I'd want to be part of either one of them. Swan Creek. I actually would like Swan Creek. Swan Creek's a great park with a lot of opportunities. TBG is just, even being from the landscape background, is just so far over my head that I wouldn't thrive there. I'd thrive in the operations part of things. I wouldn't thrive in the plant side.
Yeah, Swan Creek was. I lived over by Swan Creek when I think we just had Mateo, and we would go there and play on the playground and stuff. And actually, there was a lot of Metroparks I didn't know existed, and the only reason that we went to them is from COVID. Mm-hmm. So before I worked here, I was at UT, and I got we basically got sent home. They never knew, much like everybody else. They didn't know what they wanted to do with us. So we'd be off for a week and then had to go back to work for 2 days or this or that. So I always had the kids a lot. So we just went to different Metroparks. And actually one, I was like, oh, look at this one. It's called Brookwood. Let's go check that one out. And we walked there. I was like, or we drove there. I was like, wait, this isn't a park?
This is gated off. I can't even get in.
Yeah. So we found those out too. Same thing with Providence, where I started. I had no idea that existed. And my very first day, or the day before I started, I went there. Me and Andrea went there and walked around and looked at it. But it was COVID got us out.
And you still came the next day. That's impressive.
I did. COVID got us out to a lot of parks that we.
See, I always lose track of time with people. Like when you came aboard, must have been 01, 02, somewhere in there.
You mean 20?
What year did you come aboard?
I came in here right at COVID, so it was 20.
Okay.
So I've been here almost 5 years now.
All right.
Yeah. So it was like I said, getting out to all the parks and then going to that one was really cool because as much as I don't like old shit, that's why I like being at Glass City. Everything's new, and being a maintenance guy there, and I'm like,
it's because you were a terrible maintenance guy.
I just lucked out. You guys didn't have anybody for 7 months.
I was desperate, brother. I was desperate.
I do every once in a while. We talk about my interview too when my internet kept going out because we did it through Zoom, so I had to go in my garage. And I'm like, oh, this is starting off great. But going there was really cool, and like seeing all this cool stuff, being right by the river, and then just being able to take my kids there. And then I went to Pearson, and again, like getting to experience all this stuff where I can take my kids, like, yeah, come check it out. It's cool. There's a cool playground. You can walk around trails and that kind of stuff.
And what's the best is inevitably your kids think you own it. Like, oh,
yes.
we own this.
So
my
funny.
dad owns the Metroparks.
Yes, we talked about
that.
No,
we don't.
We were at Glass City with Lily and her friends, and she was like, yeah, the softball team was like, yeah, my dad owns this park. I go, no, I don't own it. I supervise it. Yeah. Well, there's no difference.
No difference. You can say what goes on.
Yeah.
That part is true. So, I mean, I started on the river as well. I started at Farnsworth, and, you still have a little bit of feelings for those parks, It was a great place to start. I started under Tom Shoemaker, he was actually an assistant manager at the time, and it was right during a bunch of change, probably the most change we had in a long time when Mr. Spengler came in. Each manager had to apply for their own job, and
really,
yeah,
that's wild.
So some of them got put on special assignment, and some of them remained as managers. And Tom was great, really personable guy. Had really high expectations for the cleanliness of the park, but was able to address things without really having a mean type personality towards it. Wish I would have grabbed that a little sooner. But no, but he was great.
That was my thing I got when I first got there. It wasn't because you and Brian had a good relationship, so it wasn't from Brian. It was from other people who would talk about you and like. So my first impression of you was like, all right, he's a mean guy, and then like, so that's what I'm prepared for the whole time, which is a terrible way to like start off. It's unfair to you, but you can't help what other people are saying, right? So going into
I probably could have. I probably could have helped a little bit. It's just who I am. It's not that I'm mean. I do have standards. I do hold you accountable, and if you do what you're supposed to do, you're gonna love me. If you don't, you're probably not gonna like me.
But then that's your fault, right? It's not like what you get upset about is little things, or it's like something to not get upset about. If you are troubled by something that is being done, it's for a reason,
Well, I think that's, and we'll get to our team here in a second. I think that's the problem. I am very straightforward. I'm going to tell you what I feel about it, and not necessarily in a mean way, but I'm just going to be like blunt, like, yeah, this doesn't look good. We need to redo this, and you've just poured 40 hours into what you think looks great, and I come along and say this is not the standard. People get upset.
Yeah,
and I could probably have been better at massaging that message along the way. And I think I've gotten better in that space for sure. But you go to our team now, and the team we built, we're going to say whatever we need to in the moment.
Yeah.
And that's what I think is great about our team. And This doesn't matter if it's you, Emily, or Sam. If one of us feel like someone's crossing the line, we're going to speak up and say something, and usually that's me. That's getting talking to. But I think it's great. I think the radical candor is where you need to live. The stuff where you don't really tell people what you mean, you're passive aggressive about it, doesn't help anybody. And I would much rather be just on the table, like, this is my issue. How are we going to fix it?
Sometimes people will, like, the staff will either say something to me or like question it something, and in my head, like, I'm so used to it now because that's what the culture we've built. But in my head, sometimes I'm like, man, I wonder if they would have said that to somebody else, like, what would have happened or how would they have taken it? But they wouldn't, because they know how we are and they know how we operate. And again, the culture we built there is one where you can, even if it's not a supervisor, like our frontline staff can say, like, well, I don't think we should do it that way. Okay, that's fine. If you do it the way you want to do it, I'm behind you. And if it doesn't work, we'll figure it out.
Yeah. Yeah, that is exactly. They're not as free flowing with me as they are you.
Yes. Well, same thing with me. If me and you were having a conversation about something and you say, I've learned where you say, like, well, I think it probably should go this way. Okay, it's just so much easier in my brain to be like, okay, I'm just going to do it how he says it because it'll make everyone happy. I don't say I don't care. I don't have a strong opinion about that.
It's a teaching moment for Lorenzo.
Yeah. I don't have a strong opinion about that. So I will go with this, or when you're driving around and you're like, hey, we got to make sure we get this done and get this done, this done. I know that means it better get done within the next day or two, or I'm going to bring it up again. Right. So there's a lot of things where just working with you and working with the staff, we realize what we can or how we can approach stuff. Where in the past, you probably would have said, that needs to get done today. If not, someone's going to be in trouble or whatever, but you've learned to say things differently because you've had to.
Right. Yeah. It took a lot of effort not to come across as the big bad wolf, and I never intended to, but that's how it was perceived, regardless of how I thought it went in my head. And so it took me some time to get past that. And
is that hard that people, like, day in and day out, you can think that, man, people think I'm an asshole or think I'm this way. Is that hard to deal with?
Yes and no. The no portion is because if you talk to anybody that's worked for me, you're probably going to hear a much different story. And that's what I will always tell everyone and fall back on. Like, perception is one thing, but if you came and worked for me, you would see a completely different side. Yeah, I'm the same straightforward, but you know where I'm coming from and you know how I am at that point, versus the guy coming in from another park and they see me interact with you and they're like, what a jerk. And you're just like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
So, yeah, because I think deep down you can say you don't care what people think, but you do.
Yeah.
I mean, I still care.
That's the hardest thing to get over is how people think of you. And you're right. Everyone says, I don't care. And, yeah, you do to some degree. Okay.
So we had this in softball last year. We chose our team. I got this individual on my team, and through the grapevine I hear, well, they don't like you, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, I haven't even talked to these people. How do they not like me?
Yeah.
And I end up having her on my team for like a couple weeks, and I see myself paying special attention to that person to make them like me.
Yeah.
And then they quit. And then, which again, whatever. I didn't care.
Yeah.
But it was funny. It's like, they say they don't like me. Why do I care so much?
Yeah.
I've never had an interaction with them. This is the first and only person I've ever had on my team that they said, yeah, they didn't like Craig. Most people seek me out at this point. Like, we want to play for him and stuff like that. So, but whatever. It does matter to me. I want people at least to understand who I am. If they still walk away with having that feeling of, I don't like him or he's a jerk, then at least they know where I am.
Yeah.
So,
and again, people say that, but they don't really mean it. And I think the most important is the people you're around, right? Your family, your staff at work, and and if they get you and understand you, then obviously it makes life a lot easier. And if those outside people, will just come in every once in a while and,
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
but stay.
yeah. I mean, look at Sam. She came from another park, and you asked her, well, have you heard about Craig? And the same answer came up.
Yeah.
Even though it's been years since I have really played a role in any of these people's lives. And I can't imagine that's the same narrative, but that was the narrative coming in, and I think now she'd be like, yeah, that's totally not true.
Yeah, and that's great too, because people are willing to take in new information and willing to grow in that space too. I sometimes I think like, what do people? Cause I'm sure you asked that too. Maybe not so much at Metroparks because but what do people think about me, like outside of Glass City? Because I know what their perception of Glass City is. But like, what do they think of me as a supervisor? Or, what do parents think when I coach their kids? That kind of stuff. Sometimes I've had parents come up to me and when I was the coach of JV, like parents a couple of times would come up to me like, "Hey, how come you're not playing my son more?" As I'm trying to get on the bus, and like, "All right, well, this isn't the time to do that right now."
Right.
But like, just wondering, like, sometimes you never see these people.
Yeah.
But they spread rumors about you.
They do. He's an awful person.
It's terrible.
Coaching rec, it hasn't been as bad. I've been really lucky to get really good parents. I guess lucky or just the way I ran the team has made it that way. Rec is not travel ball, so you play everyone. You do your best to win, and for the most part, I ran a team to win. In the parents' meeting, I made it very clear, like, I will get your child to play every position they want to play, but they might not be in a crucial moment. If we're up big on a team, they might get to play this position, that position. If they're going to hurt themselves, I'm not going to play them in that position. So if you can't catch the ball, I'm not putting you at first. I'm sorry. You learn to catch the ball, I'll put you at first, but I'm not going to let you get drilled in the face or, the whole team's demise because you can't catch the ball. It's not going to happen. Same thing with catching and pitching. If you're going to walk 70 batters in a row, I'm not going to put you there. It's just not going to happen. You show me outside of practice that you're practicing and getting better, I'll put you in. So, just coaching and our work is so similar. It's all about clear expectations and holding people accountable for their actions. I had a parent come and ask me to not play their kid because they had some off the field issues, and not really my role, but I'm happy to help in that children's life any way I can. And so we had a conversation like, hey, you can't do this at home. I'm not going to play you until you get better. And, if that helped that single mother out, then help that single mother out.
Yeah.
But again, I think you could always have that parent, and the parent that left me and they took their child, that was their prerogative. But I was okay seeing them go.
Sure,
I didn't want that drama.
Yeah,
No one wants that drama on the team, and they might not have been drama. I mean, that's unfair for me to say, but I could definitely see where that could play out.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned how similar coaching and working is, and it's the same thing. Like if our staff has these goals for themselves, all right, cool. That we'll help you get there. And if it's learning new skills, or if it's getting promoted to different positions, at least in there you can say like, all right, here's where you're deficient at, and here's where you're really good at. So let's work on these things. And you can also say you're not working on them, so I can't reward you if you're not helping yourself.
Right.
Same thing in softball. Like if you aren't actively working, and in this case, parents play a part in that too, because hey, parent, you got to do a little bit at home, even if it's just playing catch, and that's hard too, because, much like that single mother, or, maybe they live with their grandparents, or there's a bunch of different factors, but you try to help as much as you can, with the time we have.
Well, and that's the funny thing. I'll pick a child to play catch with that I know is not getting that work, and, then I can at least give them pointers. And a lot of times I ignored my own kid. But I got to work with them at home. I got to play with them at home, and I'll say I'm harder on my kids than any other kid on the team.
It's so easy to forget the coach's kid. When you're on the field or at a game, you're like, oh, that's the coach's kid.
I had a daughter, my middle daughter melted down in the middle of a game. She was pitching poorly, and she wanted to come out. She just wanted to quit. Basically, she quit. instead of fighting through it. I'm like, you're the only pitcher I got left. I mean, the next person I'm putting in here is going to walk everyone. Even if you walk 2 and get a strikeout, I'd rather have that. But she basically quit. So, all right, well, I'm going to come out here and I'm going to put you. She wanted to go to second base. I'm like, nope, go to center field. I'm like, you're not getting rewarded for this, you know. It wasn't because you were injured or you were going to hurt yourself. It was you basically mentally just quit. Mm-hmm. So I go to center field, and she said no. And so and all the parents said to me was like, "Oh my God, I thought you were going to kill her." My face must have been really red. Anyway, she went and sat on the bench. I just put her on the bench, and she didn't play the rest of the game.
It's all these little things that we're the same way as kids. When you're like, why is this happening to me? And then you think like, all right, these are lessons that I now know, right? Same thing as I'm sure asking your parents for advice on anything was frowned upon until at some point you're like, oh yeah, they do know more, and I need to ask them things and teach me stuff, and it's just you don't realize that till you get old, and it doesn't matter anymore as much.
It is funny because if my dad was raising my kids now, wow. My brother didn't run off the field one time. Like he walked off the field. He run a mile home.
Really?
Like in front of the car.
In front of the car.
In front of the car. We lived out in the country, so it wasn't that big a deal. But
that's so funny.
Yeah, he ran him home from or he would make him do sprints when they got home. Like he'd run off that field. I always ran off the field.
Yeah, and all it takes is one, the oldest one, or another one to get punished. You're like, oh, I know definitely not to do that.
Yeah,
you learned that lesson.
Yeah, my dad was very much old school. There's no doubt about it.
Sure,
and, he was an old farmer, and talking about like wildlife. I shot a bird one time that I wasn't supposed to, and he dragged me across the field by the back of my shirt, and by the back of my shirt, I mean my head. I told you how to do that. Like, oh my God. But I wouldn't have had it any other way. I'm the person I am because of the way my parents, parented me. So.
Yeah. Before we go, we mentioned a little bit about all the new stuff coming downtown, all the parks and stuff. What's something you're like one of the most things you're looking forward to?
It to be over?
No,
I'm just kidding.
Because there's so much, and people don't realize like how much it's out there now, right? How much 2.5 miles on each side of the river, different little areas, sections of the Riverwalk, pickleball, campground, all kinds of stuff.
Right now it's just getting Pickle open. I think that's gonna be a really cool experience for the downtown side. Once Vestibule is open, that neighborhood, which is 28-ish right now, I think that'll bookend the Riverwalk enough that you can really get a general feel of it, and we'll be up and running at almost full capacity. There's some things that still need to happen, but I think that's what I look forward most is to getting the whole thing up and running, and at that point, really releasing it to Lucas County taxpayers and saying, please come down and enjoy this. This is going to be world class. It already is. Mm-hmm. It will continue to be world class. We have a tremendous amount of leadership down there that's not going to allow it to slip. It's going to be maintained at this level I'm there for 17 more years, so at least 17 more years. And I don't know how long you have, so hopefully I've rubbed off in that way.
No, I am not far behind you. So I know one of our counterparts don't like to hear that. We're not just going for 17 years. It's more than that. Like I know. It's great to be a part of, and I know how awkward you get, so that's why I save it for the end of the podcast.
Oh yeah, I hate it.
You are a very great boss. So
we can end now.
No. So I do appreciate you being down there, and I think what just happened last week, you're like, all right, so what do we do now for this thing? And we went through it. You're like, well, it's a teaching moment, and then you explain what's happening. And I think like when those times happen, how fortunate I am to get those experiences, or because sometimes not everyone experiences that stuff, and not just at the Metroparks, but any job in general, where they don't have someone that is specifically looking out like, all right, is this something that Lorenzo should be doing, or Emily or Sam, and now I'm able to do that too for them, like always growing and helping. So I appreciate you for that part of it, because it has helped my career.
Well, I thank you. You know how much I hate this, so.
That's right.
But I look back at my career and what people did for me and didn't do for me, and that's where I want to fill the gaps. My previous boss, Joe, did a lot for me as far as getting me ready. And, I'll be quite honest, this is pretty selfish to me. The more you know, the better you are, the less I got to do. So
Sure.
It is to make sure you're prepared and ready to go. Plus, you will forever live with my name. So I want to make sure you're darn good. So.
Yeah, Craig was his boss. Oh,
yeah,
okay.
exactly.
Well, Craig, thanks for coming out here on the podcast. Again, you had to drive probably almost an hour, I would imagine. But I appreciate you coming out here. It was had a great time talking to you. So thank you.
Yep, thank you.
Thanks for downloading this episode of the Nerdball Podcast. If you want to reach out or be on the show, just search the Nerdball Podcast on any social media. If you want to email us, that is thenerdballpodcast@gmail.com. And of course, there's always YouTube, so you can go on there, subscribe to the Nerdball Podcast, and watch the podcast every week. As always, thanks to Real JP Multimedia, Cuttlefish Graphics, Big Daddy Graphics, and Perrysburg Junior High STEM Lab for always supporting the podcast. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.